The alarm bells rang across Pyros Prime for the third time that week. Una stood in the center of the royal nursery, her silver scales catching the morning light. Her claws gripped the edge of the stone table so hard that small cracks appeared in the surface. Another hatchling was gone. How many now? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The younger attendant, a green-scaled dragon named Hana, checked her data tablet with shaking hands. 17, matriarch. 17 in 3 weeks. Una closed her eyes. 17 baby dragons, each no bigger than a large dog, had vanished from the most secure facility on the planet. The royal nurseries had stood for 1,000 years without a single incident. Now under her watch, hatchlings were disappearing like smoke. "Show me the footage again," Una said. Hana brought up the security recordings on the wall screen. They watched as a small hatchling with blue-tinted scales walked through the sleeping quarters. The baby dragon moved slowly, looking around as if searching for something. Then it simply walked out through the main door, the door that should have been locked. The door that showed no signs of being forced open. "They just leave," Hana whispered. "No one takes them. They walk out on their own." Una had watched this same scene 17 times now. 17 different hatchlings all walking away in the middle of the night. The security systems never triggered. The guards never saw them. By morning, they were simply gone. Across the city, Daewon sat in his workshop staring at a cold cup of tea. His hands, usually steady enough to wire the smallest circuits, trembled. His son Spark had been the first to disappear 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of searching. 3 weeks of fear eating at his heart like acid. "Any news?" his partner asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. Daewon shook his head. The authorities had searched everywhere. They used thermal scanners that could detect a dragon's heat signature from orbit. They brought in psionic trackers, beings who could sense thoughts across vast distances. They even hired mercenary scouts from 5 different star systems. Nothing worked. The hatchlings left no trail, no trace, no clue. The worst part was not knowing. Were they hurt? Were they scared? Spark was so small, barely able to fly, his plasma breath weak and unpracticed. How could he survive alone? Daewon stood and walked to his workstation. He couldn't just sit and wait. He pulled up maps of the region, marking every place that had been searched. There had to be something they missed. There had to be. At the government building, Ambassador Taemin listened to the reports with growing concern. He had dealt with many crises in his long career. He had negotiated peace treaties, handled first contact with new species, and resolved conflicts that could have led to war. But this situation baffled him. "Pirates?" suggested one of the military advisors. "No evidence of ships," Taemin replied. "And pirates want money. No ransom demands have been made." "Wild predators?" "The planet has been settled for centuries. There are no predators large enough to carry off a dragon hatchling without leaving marks." "Then what?" The advisor threw up his hands. "They're just vanishing." Taemin studied the star map on his desk. Pyros Prime was peaceful, orderly, and safe. This shouldn't be happening. But it was, and they were no closer to understanding why. Security Chief Hai-Jin stood on the roof of the nursery, her black scales blending with the shadows. She had been a warrior for 60 years. She had fought in battles across the galaxy. She had tracked criminals through asteroid fields and cornered smugglers in space stations. But she couldn't find 17 baby dragons. It made her furious. She reviewed the facts again. The hatchlings left at night. They walked out calmly, showing no signs of distress. The security systems didn't detect them as leaving. It was as if they became invisible. "Magic?" she muttered to herself, then dismissed the idea. This was a civilized planet. Magic was just advanced technology misunderstood. Her communicator buzzed. It was Una. "Meet me in my office," the matriarch said. "We have something." Hai-Jin flew down from the roof, her powerful wings carrying her through the early morning air. When she entered Una's office, she found the matriarch staring at a data screen with an unusual expression. "What is it?" Hai-Jin asked. "The overnight sensors picked up something," Una said slowly. "Faint heat signatures. Very faint but clustered together." "Where?" Una zoomed out on the map. The location marker appeared far from the city, in a remote area near the Crystal Canyons. There was almost nothing out there except the Human Research Station, Hai-Jin said. Una nodded. "The sensors have detected these signatures on and off for the past 2 weeks. We dismissed them because the readings were strange, not quite matching a dragon's heat pattern. Because humans are colder," Hai-Jin realized. If hatchlings were sleeping near a human, their heat signatures would be partially blocked. It was a thin lead. Possibly nothing. But it was more than they had before. Yuna called Taemin and Daewon. Within the hour, they assembled in her office. She showed them the sensor data. "It's the human?" Daewon asked, his voice tight. He took them. "We don't know," Taemin said carefully. "Humans are new to this sector. They're a young species. Most of them don't even know our customs." "Then he might not know they're missing," Yuna said. "Or he might be hiding them deliberately." "Only one way to find out," Hyejin said, checking her weapon. "We go there." They left immediately. The flight to the research outpost took less than an hour. As they flew, Daewon's heart pounded in his chest. Could Spark really be there? Alive, safe? Or was this another dead end in a search full of dead ends? The research station came into view. It was small, built into the side of a hill overlooking the crystal canyons. Solar panels on the roof, a small landing pad. Lights on inside, which meant someone was home. The human who lived there was named Jae-sung. He was a scientist, studying stars or space or something equally boring. The Draconids barely noticed him. Humans were a minor species, barely worth attention. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. They were curious, sometimes clever, but ultimately unimportant in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But if he had their hatchlings, they landed on the pad. Hyejin checked her plasma rifle. It was set to stun, but she was ready to use it. Yuna's maternal instincts warred with her anger. If this human had harmed the babies, there would be no place in the galaxy he could hide. Taemin knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Hyejin looked at Yuna. The matriarch nodded. The security chief raised one powerful leg and kicked the door open. The lock shattered and the door swung inward with a crash. They rushed inside, weapons ready, hearts racing. The outpost was cluttered, but peaceful. Star charts covered the walls. Equipment hummed quietly in the corner. A half-eaten meal sat on the table. Everything looked normal, almost boring. Then they heard it. A soft sound, almost like purring. They moved toward the back room. The door was open. Hyejin went first, rifle raised, then she stopped so suddenly that Taemin almost crashed into her. "By the ancestors," Yuna whispered. On the floor, on a makeshift bed of blankets, lay the human. He was asleep, his chest rising and falling slowly. But he wasn't alone. Covering him like a living blanket were dragons. Baby dragons, 17 of them curled on his chest, tucked under his arms, draped across his legs. Their crystalline scales glittered in the dim light. Their tails wrapped around his arms. Their small bodies rose and fell with peaceful breathing. One hatchling had its snout tucked under the human's chin. Another slept on his stomach. A third was curled against his side like a cat. And there, perched on the human's shoulder, was a small dragon with blue-tinted scales. Spark. Daewon breathed. His son, his baby, safe. Sleeping peacefully on a human's shoulder. None of them could speak. They just stared at the impossible scene before them. The human stirred, sensing their presence. His eyes slowly opened. He blinked sleepily, confused. Then he saw 4 massive dragons standing in his bedroom doorway, staring at him. His eyes went wide. He said quietly, carefully, trying not to disturb the sleeping hatchlings. "Is it already feeding time?" For a long moment, nobody moved. Jae-sung stared at the 4 enormous dragons filling his doorway. The dragons stared back at him and the pile of sleeping hatchlings covering his body. The only sound was the soft purring of baby dragons and the hum of research equipment in the next room. Then Spark sneezed. A tiny puff of smoke came out of his nose. He shifted on Jae-sung's shoulder, nuzzling closer to the human's neck, still fast asleep. Daewon made a sound between a gasp and a sob. He took a step forward, his eyes locked on his son. Hyejin's rifle came up slightly, ready to protect him if needed. But Jae-sung didn't move. He couldn't move. He had 17 baby dragons on top of him. "Please don't shoot," Jae-sung said in a whisper, speaking slowly in basic Draconid. His accent was terrible, but they understood him. "You'll scare them." Yuna found her voice first. She was the matriarch. She was in charge. She had to handle this. "You," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Human, explain. Now." Jae-sung looked down at the sleeping hatchlings, then back at the dragons. He seemed confused by the question. "Explain what?" "These hatchlings. Yuna's voice rose slightly. Two of the babies stirred, making small, worried sounds. Yuna immediately lowered her voice. These hatchlings have been missing for 3 weeks. Their families are terrified. The entire planet is searching for them, and we find them sleeping on you like house pets. Missing? Jae-sung looked genuinely surprised. I didn't know they were missing. You didn't know, Hyejin repeated flatly. You have 17 baby dragons in your home and you didn't think to report it? Jae-sung's face went red. I'm new here. I didn't know if this was normal. Maybe dragons let their young roam. Some Earth species do that. Taemin stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over. Start from the beginning, he said more calmly. When did they arrive? Jae-sung thought for a moment. 3 weeks ago. Maybe a bit more. I was working late. I heard scratching at my door. He looked down at Spark. This one was outside. He looked scared and cold. I know that doesn't make sense because dragons breathe fire, but he was shivering. Spark, Daewon whispered. His name is Spark. I didn't know his name, Jae-sung said. I just knew he was frightened. So I let him in, gave him some food, tried to make him comfortable. I thought he'd leave after a few hours, but he didn't, he stayed. And the others? Yuna asked. They came later, 1 or 2 at a time over the next few nights. They just showed up at my door. I think they were following him. He gestured at Spark. I tried to send them away at first, but they wouldn't go. They would just sit outside and cry. He paused, searching for words. It was heartbreaking. So I let them stay. Hyejin lowered her weapon slightly. This didn't sound like a kidnapping. It sounded like something else. Something stranger. Show me, Yuna commanded. Show me how you care for them. Jae-sung nodded slowly. Okay, but I need to get up. Can you step back a bit? They might be startled if they wake up and see strangers. The 4 dragons moved back into the living area. Jae-sung carefully, gently, began the process of extracting himself from the pile of sleeping hatchlings. It wasn't easy. One had wrapped its tail around his wrist. Another was using his arm as a pillow. Spark refused to let go of his shoulder. It's okay, Jae-sung murmured to them in a soft voice. He wasn't speaking Draconid anymore. He was speaking his own language, Korean. The dragons didn't understand the words, but his tone was gentle and calm. I'm just getting up. I'll be right back. It's okay. He hummed as he worked, a low, soothing sound. Slowly, carefully, he moved hatchlings onto blankets and pillows. They mumbled in their sleep but didn't wake. Even Spark, after some gentle persuasion, allowed himself to be settled onto a soft cushion. Finally, Jae-sung stood up. He stretched, his back making small cracking sounds. Sorry, sleeping on the floor isn't great for humans. You sleep on the floor? Taemin asked. The bed's too small for all of us, and they like sleeping close together. Body heat, I think. Jae-sung walked past them into the kitchen area. I was about to feed them. They wake up hungry. Would you like some tea? The casual offer of tea in the middle of this bizarre situation made Hyejin want to laugh or scream. She wasn't sure which. Jae-sung started preparing food. He pulled out containers of ground meat, vegetables, and something that looked like protein powder. He mixed them together in a large bowl, his movements practiced and efficient. You know what to feed them, Yuna observed. I researched it on the planetary network, Jae-sung said. Dragons are carnivores but need some vegetation for digestion. Growing hatchlings need lots of protein and certain minerals. I've been hunting some local game for them too. They seem to like it fresh. He wasn't acting like a criminal. He was acting like a worried caretaker. But why didn't you contact anyone? Daewon asked, his voice strained. Why didn't you tell someone they were here? Jae-sung looked embarrassed. Honestly, I was afraid I'd done something wrong. I'm a human on a dragon world. I didn't know the rules. What if letting them in was illegal? What if I was supposed to report them immediately and I'd already waited too long? I thought I'd figure it out. Make sure they were okay first. From the bedroom, they heard sounds. The hatchlings were waking up. Small chirps and squeaks echoed through the outpost. Jae-sung's whole expression changed. He smiled, warm and genuine. Good morning, troublemakers, he called out in Korean. The hatchlings came tumbling out of the bedroom like a small avalanche. They tripped over each other, wings flapping, tails tangling. When they saw the adult dragons, they froze. Spark saw his father. He tilted his head, confused. He knew that dragon. That was his father. But why was father here? This was the human's home. Daewon took a step forward. Spark, he said softly. It's me. It's Dad, Spark chirped once, then looked back at Jae-sung. The human nodded. It's okay. You know him. Only then did Spark run to his father. Daewon scooped up his son, holding him close, his eyes wet with tears. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered. I thought you were gone forever. But Spark squirmed in his grip. He was happy to see his father, but he was also hungry, and the food was in the kitchen. After a moment, he wriggled free and ran back to where Jae-sung was preparing breakfast. The other hatchlings gathered around the human, completely ignoring the 4 adult dragons. They climbed on him, chirping and squeaking, demanding attention and food. Jae-sung laughed. All right. Everyone calm down. Breakfast is coming. He set out several bowls of food. The hatchlings dove in, eating with the messy enthusiasm of all young creatures. Jae-sung watched them with obvious affection, occasionally reaching down to pat a head or scratch behind an ear ridge. Yuna watched all of this with growing confusion. These hatchlings were comfortable. They were healthy. They were happy. They showed no signs of fear or distress, and they clearly adored this human. I don't understand, she said finally. Why did they come here? Why did they leave the nursery? Jae-sung looked at her. You really don't know? Know what? He was quiet for a moment, watching the hatchlings eat. They were anxious, he said finally. All of them. You can see it in how they move, how they react to sudden sounds. Spark still jumps if I drop something. That one, he pointed to a small green hatchling, won't sleep unless she's touching someone. That's not normal, is it? Yuna felt something cold settle in her stomach. The nursery is perfectly safe. Safe and comfortable aren't always the same thing, Jae-sung said gently. You have a lot of hatchlings there, right? Lots of noise, lots of activity, lots of other dragons. For some kids, that's too much. They get overwhelmed. And they came to you because... Jae-sung shrugged. I'm quiet. I'm calm. I don't have other dragons around making noise. My heartbeat is slower than yours. Human biology. Maybe that's soothing to them. I don't know. I'm not a scientist in this field. I just know they showed up scared, and when they stayed, they stopped being scared. He knelt down as one of the hatchlings finished eating and came over to him. He picked her up, holding her against his chest. She immediately relaxed, her eyes half closing. See, he said. She's not scared anymore. Timon stepped forward, his mind working through the implications. He had studied many species in his career. He understood how different biologies could affect behavior. What Jae-sung was describing made sense in a strange way. You bond with them, Timon said. I guess so, Jae-sung replied. They're just kids. Kids need someone to make them feel safe. Daewon looked at his son, who was busy eating and completely content. His son hadn't run to him. His son had run to the human. The realization hurt, but it also made something click into place. I tried to be a good father, he said quietly. I gave him everything, but I was always pushing him to be better, to be stronger. I never just let him be. You're a great father, Jae-sung said. I can tell because he's a great kid. He talks about you. He talks? Well, not with words, Jae-sung smiled. But he shows me things, brings me stuff. He brought me a Metal Gear yesterday. I think it was from your workshop. He was very proud of it. Daewon's eyes widened. That gear had gone missing 2 weeks ago. Spark finished eating and waddled over to Jae-sung. The human set down the green hatchling and picked up Spark instead. The baby dragon immediately curled against his chest, closing his eyes. He does this after eating. Yuna made a decision. We stay, she announced. For 3 days we observe. We need to understand what's happening here before we take any action. Hyejin looked surprised. Matriarch, the families are waiting. They want their children back. And they'll have them, Yuna said firmly. But if we take them now without understanding why they left in the first place, what's to stop them from running away again? We need answers, Timon nodded slowly. A wise choice. This situation is unprecedented. We must handle it carefully. Daewon said nothing. He just stared at his son, sleeping peacefully on the human's chest. Part of him wanted to grab Spark and fly home immediately, but another part, the part that had been terrified for 3 weeks, just felt relief. His son was safe. That was what mattered. Is that okay with you? Yuna asked Jae-sung. The human looked uncomfortable. He wasn't used to having visitors, especially not giant dragon visitors. But he nodded. Sure, I mean, they're your people. Your children. I understand you want to watch. We'll try not to disturb your routine, Timon assured him. My routine is pretty simple. Jae-sung said. Feed them. Play with them. Make sure they don't set anything on fire. Read to them before bed. That's about it. Over the next 3 days, the dragons learned more about human parenting than they ever expected. The first morning, they watched Jae-sung wake up. The hatchlings were draped all over him, and extricating himself was a careful process. He moved slowly, gently shifting small bodies onto pillows and blankets. He hummed while he worked, a soft, tuneless sound that seemed to keep the babies calm. Once free, he stretched and went to prepare breakfast. The dragons followed him, observing silently. Jae-sung seemed nervous having an audience, but he worked through it. I usually hunt in the mornings, he explained, pulling pre-cut meat from his cold storage. But I have enough supplies for today. Tomorrow I'll need to go out. You hunt for them, Yuna said. It wasn't a question. Dragons are predators. They should eat fresh meat when possible. The protein powder is good for supplements, but real food is better. He mixed the food with practiced efficiency. I've been studying dragon nutrition. Did you know hatchlings need 3 times more calcium than adults? It's for their scales and bones. Yuna did know that. Every dragon knew that. But hearing a human explain it was strange. The hatchlings woke up gradually, drawn by the smell of food. They stumbled out of the bedroom, chirping and squeaking. When they saw the adult dragons still there, some of them hesitated. But hunger won out. They gathered around Jae-sung waiting for breakfast. Jae-sung set out the bowls. Okay, everyone eats from their own bowl. No stealing. He said it in Korean, but the hatchlings seemed to understand the intent. They dove into their food. That one always eats too fast, Jae-sung pointed at a red-scaled hatchling. I have to remind her to slow down or she gets hiccups. Dragon hiccups involve sparks. As if on cue, the red hatchling hiccuped and a small flame shot out. Jae-sung calmly moved a data pad out of the way. See? After breakfast came playtime. The hatchlings had surprising amounts of energy. They chased each other around the outpost, practicing their flying, play fighting, and generally causing chaos. Jae-sung supervised, but he didn't hover. He let them play rough, only intervening when someone was about to get actually hurt or break something expensive. You're not worried they'll hurt themselves? Hyejin asked. They're dragons, Jae-sung replied. They're pretty sturdy, and they need to learn their limits. If I stop every little tumble, they won't know what they're capable of. One hatchling, a small blue one, kept trying to fly but couldn't stay airborne. He kept launching himself off furniture and crashing. After the 4th crash, he sat on the floor looking frustrated and sad. Jae-sung noticed immediately. He walked over and sat down next to the small dragon. Hey, he said softly. Having trouble? The hatchling chirped sadly. Flying is hard, Jae-sung continued in Korean. It takes practice. You want to know a secret? Humans can't fly at all, not without machines. You're already better than me. The hatchling looked up at him. Try again, Jae-sung encouraged. But this time watch your wings. See how the others do it? Their wings move like this. He moved his arms in a demonstration. Try that. The hatchling launched himself again. This time he stayed up for 3 seconds before landing. He chirped excitedly. Better, Jae-sung praised. Much better. Keep practicing. Daewon watched this interaction closely. When Spark had trouble with something, Daewon usually took over and showed him the correct way. But Jae-sung didn't do that. He encouraged, demonstrated, and let the hatchling figure it out himself. Around midday, one of the hatchlings started acting strangely. She paced back and forth, her scales flickering with small sparks. She made distressed sounds. That's Ember, Jae-sung said, already moving toward her. She gets anxious sometimes. He scooped up the hatchling and held her against his chest. It's okay, he murmured. You're okay. Just breathe. Ember squirmed at first, sparks shooting from her scales. But Jae-sung didn't let go. He kept holding her, kept talking in that soft, calm voice. He placed one hand over her chest right where her heart would be. Feel that? He said quietly. That's my heartbeat. Listen to it. Slow, steady. Match your breathing to it. Slowly, gradually, Ember's sparks decreased. Her breathing slowed. She relaxed against him. There you go, Jae-sung said. Better? Ember chirped softly. She didn't leave his arms. She just stayed there, soaking up his calm. Yuna felt something twist in her chest. She had seen hatchlings get anxious before. The standard procedure was to place them in a quiet room until they calmed down. Isolation until the episode passed, but Jae-sung did the opposite. He provided presence, not isolation. He gave her something to focus on, his heartbeat. And it worked. How did you know to do that? Yuna asked. Jae-sung looked surprised by the question. It's pretty standard for anxiety management. At least for humans. When someone's panicking, you help them regulate their breathing. Give them something steady to focus on. We isolate anxious hatchlings, Yuna said slowly. We thought being alone helped them calm down. Maybe for some, Jae-sung said. But for others, being alone makes it worse. They need to know someone's there. That they're safe. The afternoon brought more observations. Jae-sung worked on his research while the hatchlings played nearby. When he needed to concentrate, he told them so, and they played more quietly. Not silent, they were still babies, but they respected his need for focus. When one of them brought him a gift, a rock, a stick, a piece of metal, he always accepted it with solemn gratitude. Thank you, he'd say seriously. This is perfect. I'll keep it right here. And he would place it carefully on a shelf that was already full of similar gifts. You keep all of them, Taemin observed. Of course, Jae-sung said. They gave them to me. They're important. In the evening, Jae-sung prepared dinner. The hatchlings helped or tried to. Mostly they got in the way, but he didn't seem to mind. He let them hand him ingredients, stir bowls, and generally participate. Can you grab that bowl? He'd ask, pointing. A hatchling would drag it over, proud to be helping. After dinner came the part Daewon found most fascinating. Story time. Jae-sung cleaned up from dinner, then gathered blankets and pillows into the living area. The hatchlings immediately understood what was happening. They got excited, chirping and climbing over each other to get the best spots. All right, settle down, Jae-sung said with a smile. Everyone find a spot. The hatchlings arranged themselves around him, some on his lap, some pressed against his sides, some curled at his feet. Once everyone was settled, Jae-sung pulled out a data pad. Tonight's story is about a tiger and a clever rabbit. He began in Korean. The hatchlings didn't understand Korean. But they listened anyway, completely focused on Jae-sung's voice. He read with expression, changing his tone for different characters, making sound effects. The hatchlings watched him with wide eyes. Spark sat on his shoulder, chin resting on Jae-sung's head. Ember was curled on his lap. The others pressed close, not wanting to miss a moment. The adult dragons watched from the doorway. They had story time in the nursery too. But it was efficient. A recording played through speakers reaching hundreds of hatchlings at once. This was different. This was personal. When the story ended, Jae-sung closed the data pad. Time for bed, he announced. There was some grumbling, but the hatchlings didn't protest much. They were tired. Jae-sung herded them toward the bedroom, helping the smaller ones, encouraging the sleepy ones. He tucked them into blankets and pillows. He made sure each one was comfortable. He said goodnight to each of them individually. Then he lay down on the floor, and the hatchlings immediately rearranged themselves onto and around him. Within minutes, they were all asleep. Jae-sung looked at the 4 adult dragons watching from the doorway. This is every night, he whispered. They won't sleep unless I'm here. Why? Daewon asked quietly. Jae-sung thought about it. I think they feel safe, he said finally. Maybe it's my heartbeat. Maybe it's just consistency. I'm always here. I don't leave. I don't get frustrated with them. I'm just present. Yuna stood there in the doorway, watching 17 hatchlings sleep peacefully on a human. She thought about the nursery. Large rooms. Efficient systems. Hundreds of hatchlings. They provided everything needed for physical health. Food, shelter, safety, education. The second day started with chaos. One of the hatchlings, a green-scaled troublemaker, had somehow gotten into Jae-sung's equipment storage. He emerged dragging a rope that was tangled around his wings, legs, and tail. He looked miserable and embarrassed. Jae-sung woke to the sound of distressed chirping. He sat up carefully, dislodging several sleeping hatchlings, and went to investigate. When he saw the tangled dragon, he didn't get angry. He just sighed with a small smile. Oh, Leaf, he said gently. What did you do? The watching dragons noticed he had named them. All of them, Spark, Ember, Leaf. He had given each hatchling a name. Jae-sung sat down cross-legged on the floor. Come here. Let me help. Leaf waddled over, trailing rope. Jae-sung began the slow process of untangling him. This is going to take a while, he told the hatchling. Try to hold still. It took 20 minutes. Leaf squirmed and complained. Jae-sung remained patient, working through each knot. being careful not to pull on wings or scales. When he finally freed the last piece of rope, Leaf immediately ran away to play, completely ungrateful for the help. Jae-sung laughed. "You're welcome," he called after the hatchling. "You don't get frustrated," Heejin observed. She had been watching from the doorway. Jae-sung looked up at her. "Why would I? He's a kid. Kids get into things. That's how they learn. In the nursery, there would be consequences, timeouts, restrictions. For being curious?" Jae-sung stood up, stretching. "That seems harsh." He didn't mean to cause trouble. He just wanted to explore. Heejin thought about this. In the nursery, there were rules. Strict rules. Hatchlings who broke them faced consequences. It maintained order, but maybe it also stifled natural curiosity. That morning, Jae-sung announced he needed to hunt. "They're running low on fresh meat. I'll take a few hours." "I'll go with you," Daewon said immediately. Jae-sung looked surprised but nodded. "Okay, but we'll need to go on foot. I don't have wings." They left together, heading into the hills. The hatchlings wanted to come, but Jae-sung was firm. "No, you stay here with Yuna. I'll be back soon." The hatchlings whined but obeyed. Jae-sung promised to bring back something special. Walking through the hills, Daewon and Jae-sung traveled in silence at first. Finally, Daewon spoke. "Thank you for taking care of him." "Spark's a good kid," Jae-sung replied. "Smart, curious. A bit anxious, but he's learning to manage it." "I didn't know he was anxious," Daewon admitted. "I thought he was just being difficult." "Anxiety can look like bad behavior," Jae-sung said, "especially in kids who can't express what they're feeling. They act out because they don't know how else to communicate." They tracked a large herbivore to a clearing. Jae-sung had a plasma rifle. Human technology, less powerful than dragonfire, but effective enough. "Why do you do this?" Daewon asked as they waited for a clear shot. "You're a scientist. You came here to study stars. Taking care of 17 hatchlings can't be easy." Jae-sung was quiet for a moment. "On Earth," he said finally, "I had a younger brother. He had anxiety too. Bad anxiety. And I didn't handle it well. I got frustrated. I thought he just needed to try harder, be braver. He took the shot. The herbivore fell cleanly. He died when I was 20. Accident. And I realized I'd spent so much time being annoyed with him that I never just tried to understand him." Daewon said nothing. He understood loss. "When Spark showed up at my door," Jae-sung continued, "scared and shaking, I saw my brother. I got a second chance. Not with him, but to do better. To be better." They carried the herbivore back together. Daewon thought about his own approach to parenting. He had always pushed Spark to be strong, to be brave, to be a proper dragon. But maybe what Spark needed was just acceptance. Back at the outpost, the hatchling swarmed Jae-sung when he returned. He distributed small treats he'd brought. Interesting rocks, shiny bits of metal, colorful feathers from local birds. Each hatchling got something special. They were delighted. "You brought them gifts," Taemin observed. "I was gone for hours," Jae-sung said. "I wanted them to know I was thinking about them." Such a simple thing. But the hatchlings clutched their treasures, clearly feeling valued and remembered. That afternoon, Yuna asked to speak with Jae-sung privately. They sat outside while the hatchlings napped. "Tell me about the nursery," Jae-sung said. "How does it work?" Yuna described it. The large halls. The efficient feeding systems. The educational programs. The hundreds of hatchlings all learning together. "It sounds impressive," Jae-sung said diplomatically. "But," Yuna prompted. She could hear the unspoken criticism. "But it's designed for efficiency, not individuality," Jae-sung said carefully. "You're raising hundreds of hatchlings at once. You can't possibly give each one individual attention. We provide everything they need. Everything physical," Jae-sung agreed. "Food, shelter, safety. But emotional needs are different. Some hatchlings are fine in large groups. They thrive on activity and socialization, but others," he gestured toward the sleeping pile inside, "others need quiet. They need routine. They need individual attention. We can't restructure an entire system for a few anxious hatchlings." "Why not?" Jae-sung asked. "If the system isn't working for some of your children, shouldn't you change it?" Yuna had no answer to that. Inside, Ember woke from her nap. She looked around, saw Jae-sung was outside and immediately started to panic. Her scales sparked. She made distressed sounds. Jae-sung heard and immediately came inside. "Hey, I'm here." "I'm right here." Ember ran to him. He scooped her up, holding her close. I just went outside for a few minutes. You're okay, Una watched this. Ember had severe separation anxiety. In the nursery, they had tried everything: medication, isolation therapy, behavioral modification. Nothing worked. The hatchling panicked whenever left alone. But with Jae-sung, Ember was learning. She still got anxious, but she was learning to manage it, because Jae-sung was consistent. He always came back. He always reassured her. She trusts you, Una said quietly. I'm trustworthy, Jae-sung replied simply. That's all it takes. That evening, a message came through on the communication system. It was marked urgent from the High Council. Tae-min took the call. His face grew serious as he listened. When he finished, he looked at the others. The council knows about the situation, he said. They're sending representatives. They'll be here tomorrow, Jae-sung paled. The High Council? That sounds important. It is, Una said grimly. This has become a political matter. What does that mean? Jae-sung asked. It means, Hye-jin said bluntly, that tomorrow, very powerful dragons will decide what happens to you and these hatchlings. Jae-sung looked at the hatchlings playing around his feet. Will they take them away? Probably, Taemin admitted. That night, Jae-sung was quieter than usual. Storytime was subdued. The hatchlings sensed his mood and were clingy, pressing close, trying to comfort him in their own way. Spark climbed onto his shoulder and nuzzled his neck. Ember curled on his lap. Leaf brought him a shiny rock, the best one from his collection. Thanks, buddy, Jae-sung whispered. After the hatchlings fell asleep, Jae-sung stayed awake. He looked at each small face. He had known this couldn't last. They weren't his. They had families, but 3 weeks with them had changed something in him. He had thought coming to Pyros Prime would help him escape his past. Instead, these little dragons had forced him to confront it, to heal from it. Daewon found him like that, sitting with the sleeping hatchlings looking sad. Can't sleep? The dragon asked quietly. Thinking, Jae-sung replied. Tomorrow they'll probably decide I shouldn't have kept them. That I did something wrong. You saved them, Daewon said firmly. They came to you because they needed help. You gave it, but I should have reported it sooner. Maybe, Daewon allowed. But you did what you thought was right. You cared for them. You kept them safe. That's what matters. Spark stirred in his sleep, reaching for Jae-sung even while unconscious. The human placed a gentle hand on the small dragon's back and Spark settled again. I'm going to miss them, Jae-sung admitted. They'll miss you too, Daewon said. Then quieter. I've learned a lot watching you with them. Watching you with Spark. You've been more of a father to him these past weeks than I was for months. That's not true. It is, Daewon interrupted. And I'm grateful. You showed me what I was doing wrong. You showed me what Spark needed. The next morning came too quickly. Jae-sung fed the hatchlings breakfast, but his movements were mechanical. The hatchlings noticed. They were subdued, staying close to him. Around mid-morning, 3 dragons landed at the outpost. These weren't ordinary dragons. They were massive, ancient, their scales bearing the marks of centuries. Their presence radiated authority and power. The High Council had arrived. The lead dragon, an ancient female with silver-blue scales, surveyed the scene with sharp eyes. Behind her stood 2 others, one male, one female, equally imposing. I am Counselor Bora, the ancient dragon announced. This is Counselor Woo-jin and Counselor Subin. We are here to resolve this situation. Jae-sung stood up slowly. 17 hatchlings immediately arranged themselves around him, some hiding behind his legs, others pressing against his sides. They faced the enormous dragons with fear but also determination, as if they would protect their human if needed. The sight made even the ancient counselors pause. Well, Counselor Bora said, a hint of amusement in her voice. This is interesting. Counselor Bora stepped forward, her ancient eyes studying Jae-sung and the cluster of hatchlings around him. She moved slowly, deliberately, watching how the babies reacted. They pressed closer to the human but didn't run. That told her something. Human, she said, her voice deep and measured. You are Jae-sung, the astrophysicist? Yes, Counselor. Jae-sung replied, trying to keep his voice steady. You have been harboring 17 missing hatchlings for 3 weeks. You did not report their presence. Explain yourself. Jae-sung took a breath. He had rehearsed this in his head all night. They came to me, one at a time. They seemed scared and cold. I didn't know they were missing. I thought maybe this was normal for dragon children. I'm not from here. I don't know all your customs. For 3 weeks, Counselor Subin interjected sharply. You didn't think to ask anyone if this was normal? I was afraid, Jae-sung admitted. I'm a human on a dragon world. I thought maybe I'd already broken some rule by letting them in. I thought if I contacted someone, they'd be taken away, and they seemed so much better here. So I kept waiting, trying to figure out the right thing to do. The right thing, Subin said coldly, would have been to report it immediately. Their families have been suffering. Do you understand that? I do now, Jae-sung said quietly. And I'm sorry for that. I truly am. Counselor Woo Jin walked around the group observing. Tell us about their care. What have you been doing with them? Jae-sung described his routine. The feeding, the playing, the story times, the individual attention when they got anxious. As he spoke, the hatchlings began to relax slightly. This was familiar. They're human, telling stories, and they sleep with you? Bora asked. Yes, they won't sleep otherwise. I tried setting up separate beds, but they just climbed onto mine. Well, my floor. They like being close. Hatchlings in the nursery sleep in their own spaces, Subin said. Yes, and these hatchlings left the nursery, Woo Jin pointed out. Perhaps we should ask why. Bora nodded slowly. Matriarch Yuna, step forward. Yuna came forward, her head held high despite her nervousness. You run the royal nursery. These hatchlings left under your watch. Explain. Yuna had prepared for this too. The nursery follows all protocols. We provide food, shelter, education, and safety. Everything a growing hatchling needs. And yet 17 left, Bora said. Why? I believe, Yuna said carefully. They needed something we weren't providing. Individual attention, quiet spaces, personal care. The human, Jae-sung, he gives them something we don't have the resources to give. Because he has only 17, Subin said. You have hundreds. Of course he can provide individual attention. That's exactly the problem, Woo Jin said. Our system is designed for efficiency, not individual needs. Subin turned on him. You suggest we restructure our entire nursery system because a few hatchlings are anxious. That's ridiculous. Every generation has anxious individuals. They adapt. Or they run away, Daewon said, stepping forward without permission. My son ran away because he couldn't adapt. And I didn't see it because I was too busy trying to make him fit the mold. You speak out of turn, Subin warned. Let him speak, Bora commanded. You are the father of Spark, yes? Yes, Counselor. And I have watched this human with my son for 3 days. I have learned more about what Spark needs in these 3 days than I learned in months of trying my way. Bora turned to Jae-sung. Human. What do these hatchlings need that they weren't getting? Jae-sung thought carefully before answering. They need to be seen. Not as a group, but as individuals. They need someone who notices when they're anxious and helps them calm down. They need consistency. Someone who's always there, who doesn't change. They need quiet sometimes, not constant activity. And they need to know it's okay to be scared, to be different, to need help. These are universal needs, Taemin added, also stepping forward. Not just for dragons. The human recognizes this because his species prioritizes individual care. We could learn from that, Subin looked offended. Learn from humans? They're barely spacefaring. They know nothing of our ancient traditions. Ancient doesn't mean perfect, Woo Jin said. Perhaps our traditions need updating. This is exactly what I feared, Subin said. One incident and we're ready to abandon centuries of proven methods. Proven for most, Woo Jin countered. But not for all. These 17 are proof of that. The two counselors faced off. The tension in the room rose. The hatchlings picked up on it, becoming agitated. Small sparks began appearing on their scales. Jae-sung immediately crouched down. Hey, he said softly in Korean. It's okay. They're just talking. Nobody's angry at you. He gathered the nearest hatchlings to him, placing his hands on them. His steady presence, his calm voice began to soothe them. One by one, the sparks faded. Bora watched this with great interest. You calm them without words. They don't understand my words, Jae-sung said. But they understand tone. They feel my heartbeat. They know I'm calm, so they can be calm too. Demonstrate, Bora commanded. Show me how you handle an anxious hatchling. As if on cue, Ember began to show signs of anxiety. Her scales flickered. Her breathing quickened. She started to panic. Jae-sung picked her up immediately, holding her against his chest. I've got you. You're safe. Listen to my heart. He placed one hand on her back, one on her chest. He hummed that same tuneless hum. Slowly, Ember's breathing synchronized with his. Her sparks decreased. Within 2 minutes, she was calm, resting her head against his shoulder. Remarkable, Woo-Jin breathed. In the nursery, Yuna said quietly. We isolate anxious hatchlings until they calm down. It usually takes an hour or more. Because isolation increases anxiety, Jae-sung explained. For some hatchlings anyway. Ember needs presence, not absence. She needs to know someone's there. Bora was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. I want to see their families. Bring them here, Taemin sent the message. Within an hour, 17 dragon families arrived at the small outpost. Parents, siblings, even grandparents in some cases. They crowded around, desperate to see their missing children. The hatchlings recognized their families. They chirped and ran to them. Parents scooped up babies, crying with relief. For several minutes it was chaos. Joyful, emotional chaos. But then something interesting happened. After the initial reunion, several hatchlings came back to Jae-sung. They wanted their families, but they also wanted their human. They tried to bridge the gap, bringing parents to Jae-sung, chirping at both. Spark was one of them. He nuzzled his father, clearly happy to see Daewon. But then he grabbed his father's claw in his mouth and tried to pull him toward Jae-sung. I think, Daewon said with wonder. He wants us both. Bora observed all of this. She saw the hatchlings torn between two worlds. She saw the parents' confusion and relief. She saw Jae-sung standing awkwardly to the side, trying not to interfere with family reunions but clearly sad. Finally, she spoke. I have reached a decision. Everyone fell silent. The nursery system is not working for all hatchlings. This is clear. We have been prioritizing efficiency over individual need. This must change. She looked at Yuna. You will reform the nurseries. Create quiet spaces. Reduce group sizes. Provide individual attention where needed. Learn from what the human has done here. Yuna bowed. Yes, counselor. As for these 17 hatchlings, Bora continued, their families will decide. Each family may choose. Take your child home with the new support we will provide, or allow them to remain with the human under official supervision. Remain with him? Subin protested. That's unprecedented. So is this entire situation, Bora said calmly. The hatchlings formed a bond with this human. Breaking that bond abruptly could harm them. We must consider their emotional well-being. She turned to Jae-sung. Human, if you agree, you will become an official broodkeeper, a guardian for hatchlings who need specialized care. You will be given resources, training, and support. This is not a small responsibility. Jae-sung looked at the hatchlings, then at the families, then back at Bora. Yes, I agree. If it helps them, I'll do it. Then it is decided. Families, you have until sunset to choose. The families deliberated. It was a hard choice. Some parents wanted their children back immediately. Others recognized that their hatchlings had been happier here than at home. Still others wanted to try again with the new support systems in place. By sunset, the decisions were made. 8 hatchlings would return home. Their families had learned from watching Jae-sung. They understood better now what their children needed. With the new nursery reforms and personal commitment to individual care, they felt ready. 9 hatchlings would stay with Jae-sung. These included Spark, Ember, and Leaf, the ones with the most severe anxiety. Their families would visit regularly, learning from Jae-sung, rebuilding bonds gradually. Daewon was one of those who chose to leave Spark with the human, though the decision clearly pained him. He needs this, he told Jae-sung. He needs you. But I want to visit. I want to learn how to be the father he needs. Any time, Jae-sung said. Always, he needs you too. We'll figure this out together. The 8 hatchlings leaving were sad to go but excited to see their homes. Jae-sung said goodbye to each one, giving them personal messages and small gifts to remember him by. You're brave, he told one. You're kind, he told another. I'm so proud of you, he told a third.